Hi, this is Tim and Joel. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses, a podcast about the outdoors, hunting, and being a steward of the land. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses. This is episode number 2, and we're calling it Getting Professional Help. And we're not talking about the professional help like you wake up in an Amish barn naked and there's a baby Sasquatch next to you that's calling you daddy. It's not that kind of help, is it?
No. We've got a very special guest that we're going to be bringing on, Dirk Albright. And he's got a wealth of experience. He's been a land agent in multiple states and is an avid hunter and land manager. So we're really fortunate to have him on our show.
Yep. And before Dirk comes on, let's kind of talk a little bit about what kind of things we worked on this week, right? So,
yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah. So it's been we're kind of in that period to where spring's done. We're kind of going into where it's getting pretty hot. We're in June. And so I'm not planning a lot of stuff. So for me, we built as we've talked before, we built a pond. And so you were out there. We actually stocked that new pond this last week. So pretty excited about that. For those who might be interested, we put some bass, bluegills, and some catfish in it. And then I'm going to manage that pond really for some like trophy pan fishing, I've decided. So we're going to put some red deer in as well as a few hybrids, and I'm pretty excited how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, well, if frogs put on weight on fish, they're going to grow fast because you got a lot of frogs around there, man.
I mean, there must be a gazillion tadpoles in this pond. I mean, it's just amazing.
It's insane.
What else have I been doing this week? So the other piece is it's been hot days, but the nighttime's been relatively cool. And one of the things I've been noticing is that the deer seem to be moving a lot. Have you noticed having the same thing?
I have seen a lot of deer movement, especially right around dusk, right?
Yeah.
A little bit before dusk, and then a lot of does and some fawns.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. We had a doe and a fawn bed right down below our house, our shouse, if you will, the other day. But that brings up another good topic, I think, on fawns. I'm no expert on this, but my recollection is May and especially June is a big fawning month. And, those fawns, to my understanding, they're born without scent. So that's one of their protections from predators, and their mothers will leave them for periods of time, and those fawns are basically taught to stay put. And I had a neighbor actually who's just out. It's hay season this time of year too, so we're getting that first cutting, and unfortunately, I think there were 3 fawns that were a casualty of his haying process. So I guess, I mean, it's tragic, and that's one of those things we were talking with this landowner is, he doesn't particularly like whitetails. I mean, he's a farmer and he's trying to put food on his table. But when you think about hunting, particularly with the price after this COVID, I mean, beef is selling for, $6 a pound if you're thinking hamburger. And you put those fawns into full-grown deer at some point, they're worth quite a bit.
It's a lot of money. A
Yeah.
lot of value. Yeah, certainly. And it's just sad.
It's sad.
Yeah. Anything else?
No. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, from an outdoors standpoint, I finally it was dry enough this week for me to get down in the bottom part of my property and with my tractor and my rotary mower and do some mowing down there. So I was excited to do that. First and only time this year, so it was pretty jungly, fighting the jungle down there, and the kill plots that I've got and food plots I've got are doing really well down there, so I'm excited about that. And then, in episode 1, I talked about my field of weeds.
The foxtail plot.
The foxtail plot, field of weeds, whatever we want to call it. But so I got a second spraying on that, and I'm hopeful that that's going to do some damage. We'll see.
Yeah.
And that's that's kind of my events this week.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. Well, with that, should we get Dirk on the line here and get on with the episode?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm excited to meet Dirk and explore his learnings.
All right. We've got exciting guests today, Dirk Albright, and Dirk is a land specialist. Dirk, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Great. Yeah, it's hot here in Iowa. And Dirk, remind me where you're located again.
I'm living in Kansas, so just outside of Kansas City, a suburb called Olathe.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. And the weather there today?
Hot. Real hot. We need rain.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's coming. Hopefully it's coming.
Yeah, it is. I'm hoping. Hopefully tomorrow.
Well, speaking of Kansas, and we had a call the other day, and just kind of a prep call and get ready for this podcast. And you were out on your farm. Tell us a little bit about your farm and what you're doing out there.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. Had an opportunity to manage a farm that was being underutilized, and basically just offered my, services to help take care of the place and manage the place and get rid of trespassers and do all that kind of stuff for the owner, who's a client of mine. And it's worked out great. I've had the opportunity to, love to bow hunt, so he has all the equipment, and then I've added some additional equipment to be able to, plant food plots and really take care and manage the habitat and try to grow some big deer not too far from the house here. So very fortunate, very lucky.
Well, I'm sure the wife likes that too, being that close. And
yeah.
Knowing our history with you traveling all over God's green earth, right? That's awesome. How long has this been taking place?
So I've had this for about a year and a half, and then of course we own some land up in Iowa too that we actually purchased a couple of years ago. So this is a lot easier to get back and forth from, and then I head up to our property up there about once every 3 months or so, and I've got a good buddy of mine that helps take care of that too, and we do the same up there. We plant food plots and have a bunch of private ground that we have access to, and then we lease a little bit of ground too up there as well. So.
Yeah, no shortage of hunting in the Albright family. That's awesome.
No.
Awesome.
I pay my dues in the off season, and then the wife lets me go during November. So.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into this. I think a place to start would be can you give us just a little bit of history of who Dirk is and your career path and then where you're at specifically right now?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. So kind of grew up in Iowa. My dad was in the Marines for 20 years, but he retired. We moved to Iowa back in '98 and never really hunted. But grew up on the front of a bass boat, camping, doing all the fishing, doing all those type of things. And when I moved to Iowa, after high school, I was fortunate enough to go to Northern Iowa and play football and met my best friend, and he's like a brother to me and an uncle to my kids. And he kind of got me into this hunting thing, this so-called, I had no interest in hunting at all as far as deer is concerned. I had never shot a bow. I had really never hunted a deer with even a rifle or a shotgun. And at the time, we had a buddy that bought some land, and he was in NFL, so he didn't have time to manage it. And so we're like, we'll give this a shot, right? Two young guys, we know enough to be dangerous, and that's where I really fell in love and developed that passion for land. And I never really knew it was there, but that led into, ironically, I won a scratch ticket on the way to work one morning for like $800. And I was like, okay, here's my opportunity to buy a bow. Needless to say, the wife wasn't too happy about it, but she still gives me crap about that. But anyways, that's how I then got into bow hunting. And so I can say that my passion for land came first, ironically, most people hunt first and then they kind of get into management, but that drew me into bow hunting. And now, as you know, Joel, I'm just obsessed with it. So I eat it, I sleep it, I breathe it. And it's what I'm meant to do on Earth, I think.
So Dirk,
yeah.
So Dirk, with that, my guess is you run probably quite a few cameras and stuff. Do you have, without giving up too much information, do you have any deer that you're chasing for this next year?
Yeah, this next year we've got a couple of good ones, and here in Kansas, something that I think any bow hunter would be proud of. I don't know if it's as big as the one back behind you there, but they're probably pretty close. And then we haven't even started running cameras in Iowa yet, just simply because I'm waiting to see if I drew. So, but yeah, we should have some potential. We've got a couple now that are a lot larger than anything I've got on the wall that are in the daytime already. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. So fell in love with outdoors and hunting specifically, and won the lotto literally won the lotto to buy a compound bow. Right? What was your first compound bow?
It was a diamond. Gosh, what was it? A diamond something. I got it at Bass Pro. It was one of those buy all kits.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they make diamond anymore, Bowtech does or not, but it was a good bow. You know, I that's one of two bows that I've ever owned. I shot that for a couple of years, killed my first bow buck with it, and then bought an Elite back in like 2011, and I still shoot that bow today. I mean, it's a lot for me about feel, you know.
Sure it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people too. Is there's so many good bows. The technology's over the charts, right? And what I tell people is you shoot a lot of bows and buy the one that feels the best. Don't buy a brand. Don't buy it based on the brand name. Buy the one that feels the best to you.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah. We try to get I have a lot of clients that are interested in the outdoors, but have never really bow hunted, and they always ask me, and I answer it the same way. You're going to have to shoot a few bows and then go with the one that feels the best, because it really has to be an extension of your body.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
What's the bow brand you shoot, Joe?
A couple years ago, we've both Sammy and I, Dirk, have gone to crossbows because of shoulder issues and football issues, actually. So nothing to look forward to there for you. Sorry, but 10 points. We both shoot 10 points. Yeah.
Yeah, I just recently had shoulder surgery as well, so I used to have an old Matthews switchback, which I still have, but I have also switched back to a crossbow as well.
But you're shooting?
I'm shooting a oh my gosh,
Raven.
Yeah. Yep.
Raven.
Good brand. But yeah, from there, I got we moved to Des Moines after college, and I worked for Wells Fargo for about 6.5, 7 years, and just started climbing the ladder there and loved my job, but just all I could think about was the outdoors, managing that property, bow hunting, and I was like, I can't sit at a desk anymore. So randomly applied for a job with Whitetail Properties back in 2013, and I'm pretty sure I missed about a dozen calls from them, but they never left a message. And so finally one day I just picked up the phone and and was very fortunate enough to get hired by them and had a great career in several states with them as well. And then have been blessed to kind of take the next step, in my opinion, and this could be wrong, but the next step in my career and really truly become a professional in the land business. So Midwest Land Group has really offered me a rare opportunity to step up my game and really be a professional representative in this market.
That's great.
When how long have you been with Midwest?
About 5 months now.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So this year, 2020. So
yeah, 2020.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing a little history and also entertaining our pretending to laugh at some of our jokes here, so we greatly appreciate that. So Dirk, let's jump into this. And we'll kind of, I think, use the scenario with Tim and I. In episode 1, we kind of talked about how we came across our property and what we've done since we've acquired it. But so someone comes to Dirk, calls you, sends you an email, IMs you, texts you, whatever it is, and says, "Hey, I really have this burning passion to own some property." Where do you take them? What's that first communication you have with them? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we can get real granular. We can kind of keep it, like you guys said, at the 1,000-foot level. But the first part of that conversation is kind of an interview process. It's okay. You say you want land. Give me some ideas around what exactly you're looking for or looking to do with the land. So, do you want timber? Do you want a build spot? Do you what's the distance factor from where you currently live? Most people who are, and over the years, I've got a good gauge on this. It's a secondary property for them. It's a recreational property. It's an investment property. It's just something additional to what they have at home, whether they're a hunter or whether they're a farmer or businessman who just wants some return on his money. Those are the questions that I really have to dig into to kind of figure out what direction to steer them, right, to help them out with. And so that initial conversation, other than building rapport and getting to know the client, is really centered around, how do we get them headed in the right direction? Because as you know, Joel, and you guys may know together, is that land can be intimidating. I mean, especially if you didn't grow up around it or have been a hunter your whole life, or even if you have, that's the biggest reservation I get is, well, I don't know anything about land, and that's a big part of the buying process and even selling process is just really engaging the client and educating them and figuring out what direction they want to go.
You're bringing that up, Dirk. That's really one of the niches that we're trying to fill is trying to educate people on what it's like to buy ground and what do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
And try to help them not make maybe some of the mistakes that we've made. But coming back to what you were saying, do you have an average demographic of your clients that are looking for ground? I'd be curious to understand that.
Yeah, so as a lot of people will know, right now one of the largest exchanges of wealth in the United States is happening with the baby boomer generation, right? They're getting to the point now where they're long retired, they're getting up there in age, and they're now looking to their family or looking to sell a lot of the property that they've owned over the years, whether they've inherited it or whether they bought it way back in 1985, whatever. Our largest selling demographic is that baby boomer generation right now, for the most part. It's kind of ironic. Other than that, we unfortunately divorces happen. Unfortunately, family members die. Things like that happen. That's a big world of our selling market right now. Of course, there's also people that are looking to flip land that we help out do that. And on the selling side, though, I would say that's the majority of our clientele is that older generation, that 65, 70, 60 years old and up, that their family just isn't into the land thing, and they'd rather have the cash in their pocket and move on with their life.
Sure.
Or they would continue to retire.
Hey, Dirk, not trying to sidetrack you here, but just curious, something came to mind with the coronavirus. Are you seeing an impact on people wanting to purchase more land, move from suburbia to outside rural? I mean, are you seeing any trends at all that you could put your finger on?
Ironically, I was pretty fearful just starting out with a new company, and all of a sudden this virus hit. That, oh my gosh, that everything's just going to flatten out, and this is just going to be impossible. There's not going to be anybody in the market to buy right now. They're going to lock their money up and run. But it has been the busiest 3 months of my career ever.
Wow.
Especially with rec ground and rural homes. We're seeing a big influx of people that live in the city or live near the city wanting to move rurally. And not only that, but if they live in the city and they have the money, they want to buy another piece of land and build a little cabin on it, or a little pole barn living quarters, or something where they can get away. And it's another thing along with that. It's ironic, as of 2-3 years ago, we also had a huge influx of doomsday prepper type people of all income levels. I mean, I've working with 100 millionaires that are doomsday preppers, and I've worked with people that are selling their house and moving to land, to doomsday prep. So it's an interesting time, obviously, as we all know. But the long-winded version to answer your question, yes, it's been extremely busy.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It'll be interesting, how long that trend lasts and what that looks like, 3 to 5 years down the road. Not good I don't like that sign for hunters. That means more competition, right, on the land. But
Could be. Yeah.
maybe people are just getting as smart as we have, and we just we're ahead of the curve.
That very well could be. Yeah, if you got in the land game in the last 5 years, it's all relative, right? Back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, Granddaddy was saying 500 an acre was expensive, right? And now his land's worth 3,500 an acre, especially down there where you guys are at, And so I can't ever predict that will happen if you bought land at 3,500 an acre. But the relative incline of land is an average of 3% over the last 30 years. It's increased in value. And that encompasses all land, right? So there's a big fluctuation in crop ground. But as far as raw land is considered, on average, 3% over the last 30 years, it's increased.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Every
good.
year. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So where we left you was this person called you. You've talked through. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of step one is, hey, let's talk about your buck criteria. What's important? Buying points. What are you going to use the land for? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And now that you got that, what's the next step?
So after I've got enough information to formulate kind of a checklist for the buyer or seller even, what we'll do is then search the internet, and search our inventory. For us, we also utilize the MLS, which some agents don't in the land business, some do. It's a great extra tool to have with so many people in the industry now that call themselves land agents. It's kind of a must-have, especially if you live close to the cities. But what we'll do is we'll find them. We'll start searching for property that fits their criteria. And maybe I already have one that after I interviewed them, they, hey, I've got 2 properties I think would really fit you. We'll shoot them those properties over, have a follow-up conversation, and then it's kind of off to the races. We'll start looking to show property. We'll meet them out there, or they'll hop in the car with us, and we'll take the UTV out and or walk, the whole thing. But if it's one of my properties that I have currently listed, we kind of pride ourselves and have really gridded that property. We have, map programs on our phones and iPads now. We have, soil maps. We have topo maps. And then on top of that, we've really walked the property and know, hey, where's this rub? Where's this old scrape? Where's the bedding area if they're a big deer hunter? Or where's a good build site? How far is it? How much is it going to cost to run power and water to this build site? Septic systems. The stuff we have to know can be very broad, but we have to know it in a lot of detail. Just because, again, 90% of our clients have not bought land before. So it's really trying to figure out what they want, when they want it, what they can afford, and then all the stuff that encompasses that once they find a piece of ground, right? and that's important too, is the budget. And like I always tell my clients, though, a good agent will never ask your top dollar if you're buying, and a good agent will never ask your bottom dollar if you're selling, right? And that's just because it's our job to get you the most money possible in every scenario. So
Yeah, so you kind of brought up the topic of money here, so maybe it's a good transition to correct me if I'm wrong.
no,
Buying land is, in my experience, buying property was significantly different approach financially than buying a house, buying
yeah,
residence.
absolutely.
Can you walk us through what options are available? Maybe what's the main approach, and then maybe some creative approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're going to finance land, let's start there because that's kind of the longer-winded version. Typically a raw land lender, which we have several that we work with, and it's gotten better over the years, even since you purchased your land, Joel, 7-8 years ago now or so?
Yes.
Typically a lender for raw land is going to ask you for anywhere from 15 to 30% down in cash, okay? And a lot of that has to do with your credit profile, how much money you're going to put down on top of that, the type of land they're going to lend on, whether it's crop ground or recreation ground or a ranch with a house. There's a lot that goes into it as far as on the bank's end. But the best thing you can do if you're looking to buy and you're going to borrow money from a bank is to call an agent like myself and ask for a couple of lenders that they may recommend, and then get pre-approved. And the biggest part of that is you don't want to waste your time out searching for land for maybe, who knows, I've had clients search for 2-3 years and they finally found the perfect place. And if you can't buy that place at that point in time, you just waste 2 or 3 years, So most pre-approvals are good for about 90 days. Some are good for even longer, depending on your credit profile. But that's the first step that I would take after that initial call with that real estate agent, is if you're going to borrow money, go get pre-approved. Because that's about 65-75% of the process. After that, it's a document thing, right? And the documents all are circled around what type of income you have. So if you're business for self, there could be a little bit of a harder journey because a lot of business for self people write off a lot, right? They don't show a lot of net income. As a business for self person, when you go buy land or even buy a house, you're always going to be, calculated on your net income. So after all your expenses, after all your write-offs, what's left in the honey hole, right? Whereas if you're a W-2 employee, where you get paid a salary, you get paid twice a month or every week or whatever, you're actually going to be evaluated on your gross income. So prior to taxes being taken out, for instance, a W-2 income might make, let's just use $200,000 a year for an even number. They're going to use $200,000 a year. If you're a business for self owner, you make $200,000 a year, and you write off $100,000 a year, they're going to use $100,000 a year. So something to keep in mind when you're looking to buy ground. Cash is pretty easy. I mean, cash you can typically close quicker. I hate to say that cash is king, but because cash is cash, right? Whether you're getting money from the bank or you have cash in your pocket, ultimately cash is going to buy that property either way. But you have a lot more flexibility with cash, and typically with cash you have a little more negotiating room if the seller's willing to, because you'll close faster, right? You'll close in maybe 2-3 weeks versus maybe 2 months.
Yeah.
Depending on contingencies and some things like that. But other than that, there is a third option. Some landowners will do contract for deed, which is basically owner financing. It's a little more rare, and I think the misconception is that it's easier From a document standpoint, yes. Let's just say that business for self guy would rather do a land contract and not go through the bank because he doesn't show enough net income. Typically, though, there's very little room for negotiation, and the seller sets his interest rate and sets his terms, and also sets his amount down. In my experience, a lot of times it's a higher interest rate than the bank. It's more money down than the bank would ask, but you get the flexibility of not having to send all those documents in if you know you can afford the property. And it's not bad for the seller either. If, the seller owns a few properties and he wants to collect interest off those payments for a few years, hey, why not? As long as you have a title company or a real estate lawyer write that up, so it's legally binding. I would always do that. Don't ever do a napkin, paper napkin restaurant deal or anything like that. But yeah, I got a little long-winded there, but I could go on with the lending side of things for a long time. And, obviously if anybody has more questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. But I think that's about the 1,000-foot level on that.
Perfect.
Yeah, sure. So, so next steps. So the person, the person's decided what they want. You've showed them some land, and it's like, okay, I want to buy this property. Hopefully, some of the pre-financing is done. Is the big message I heard from you in that last section. What's the next step then?
Yeah, so the next step's really to get an offer. The paperwork is getting thicker and thicker now, over the years. But the biggest part of this process that I try to tell my buyers and sellers to think about is just it's a process, right? It's a game. Don't get offended. Don't get frustrated when you have to sign all these forms because it's part of the process. It's a have to. There's no skipping these steps, right? And it's my job as a real estate agent to deal with all the in-betweens, the mad buyer or the mad seller or the ridiculous offers or, those things like that. That's my job to try to educate both sides and say, hey, this is just part of the game. And so beyond that, once you get that offer in, it's just kind of a back and forth. And from there, it's an acceptance or it's a rejection or it's a counter offer situation where you're going back and forth just trying to get to the right price point where the buyer and the seller are both happy. And, again, I could go on for a long time about that process, but at the 5,000-foot level, the biggest thing I can emphasize there is just be patient, realize it in a way it is part of the game, and just trust your real estate agent to really deal with the pain points in that process. And the more relaxed you can be, the better chance you have.
And Dirk, if we just kind of focused on the buying part of land here so someone buying land, you're helping to buy land. What are some of the have-tos that you would consider have to have in an offer? And then what are some of the what are some of the common errors / fails that you've seen on some offers?
Yeah, so as a buyer, again, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think the most important things that are ahead of that offer is making sure your agent and you understand what contingencies you may want to put in. For instance, if you're going to build a house, right, you need to know that you got the ability to hook up to power, you got the ability to hook up to water or a well, dig a well, or hook up to sewer or a septic system, right? Because you're going to need those three items no matter what. And again, not to get too long-winded, but if you're going to put in a well, you got to know that there's a spot to dig that well. And that requires calling a few well diggers to go out and do some tests, dig some holes, and tell you yes or no. Same with septic. There's every state and city has different septic system laws and rules. So you gotta call the city or call a septic guy to come out and do what's called a perk test, which they'll dig a hole and say, okay, this soil is appropriate to put a septic system in, and then they'll tell you what type of septic systems that you can put in. Same with power and hooking up to city water or city sewer. There's fees involved there. If you really want that run to your property, how far away is it? And how much will that cost to do to do those type of things. As a hunter, specifically, if you're a gun hunter or bow hunter, you're going to want to know how, as a bow hunter, access, terrain, really walking the property to see if there's even huntable areas you can get into in prevailing winds. What's the soil like for food plots? What's the neighborhood like? Is you got tree stands on every fence line? As a gun hunter, do you have enough wide open space to shoot 200-300 yards? Or is it going to be more family oriented? Again, I could go on forever. There's a lot that goes into it, but as far as a buyer's concerned, the must-haves, I think it's situational, but the biggest thing is location and price. I think as a buyer, is the location right, and is the price going to fit your budget? When we come down to the dollars and cents, and then after that, it's the top three things that they were looking for, and can we accomplish those top three things with any contingencies in that offer? And so once the offer is accepted, then it's just getting that stuff done, right? Getting the financing approved, getting all the tests done. And, a lot of the time the agent and the buyer are working hand in hand through that entire process, and even possibly trying to help the seller get prepared to move or get all their equipment off, or, if it's a family that needs help auctioning things, getting them in touch with auctioneers. I mean, it can get very complicated very quick, and a good agent will make your seller and your buyer feel like really nothing's going on. We're just kind of waiting for that close date for the most part. So that's important when you interview somebody to sell, or as a buyer's agent, that confidence that you can exist in your own world while they're doing the best they can for you in this world of buying land.
So with that, Dirk, what percent of your business do you think, if you had to put a percentage, is word of mouth? And that's just illustrating out the great job that you do.
Yeah, it's an experience thing, right? And I've done this now in 4 different states. I started over three or four different times now. I can't even remember. But year 1 and 2 is more of a marketing campaign type year as an agent, getting your face and name out there and trying to meet people, cold calling. I can't tell you how much time I spend on calling for sale by owners and expired listings that maybe had a bad experience and need help. And then about year 2 or 3, it really starts to become a recognition game. So a lot of referral business. I would say by year 3, you want to be up in that 85% word of mouth. And then you're really cruising, then you're really setting a precedence in the area that you run around as an excellent agent. Because that's in my opinion, that's the true mark of a great agent, is if you're hearing their name all the time from people that you're not soliciting, right? So, oh man, I see a sign and I heard about that guy. He sold Joe Smith's property in 3 days. And he had a great experience, and he was professional and clean cut. And I mean, I don't know how he keeps his truck so clean, but those type of things that really make a difference. And after being in this now for almost 7 years, that's what a really good agent can prove to you and show to you.
Good, excellent.
Anything else you would add, Dirk, as far as so that kind of gets us to an offer agreement and really a sales happening? How about on the kind of the closing side of this? Any advice you could give?
Yeah, closing is typically pretty easy. You go to a title company, you go to a real estate attorney's office, and you sign some papers, and then you walk out, and you own your land. One big thing I would recommend is always keep an ear to the pavement for that first tax payment, because in some states it will actually go to the previous owner, and you have to rely on them to get you that information. Some states you're paying forward in tax, some states you're paying in arrears on those taxes. Getting your government programs all signed up for and either negotiated or in your name, like such as CRP programs, WRP programs, those type of things that can really hurt you if you don't stay ahead of the game. Forestry programs, those are big points to know. Again, a part of that buying process, that's the information you got to get from the seller that, hey, is this thing in any programs? Because you could lose some substantial income, especially in a state like Iowa, if that CRP program or WRP program rolls through and you didn't know about it and it cancels out on you, you then have several steps that could take you years to get it back re-enrolled. And that's, especially in a state like Iowa, that could be some very substantial income to a buyer and a new property owner. Other than that, I just recommend enjoying your land. I mean, it truly is one of the greatest experiences for me as an agent to just see the joy on people's faces when they either have sold that piece that they really needed to sell or bought that piece that they can see the future on. And then, just continuing to touch base and build those relationships to where, again, you get that referral business as an agent, but you just never know how life changes, right? They could have bought their dream property and something comes up and 3 years later they need help with it again, or 13 years later, 20 years later, their kids want to sell it, or they want to buy something bigger and better, So it's very important for us, and for me personally, is, I try to touch base with people at least once a year. I know it's been a little bit different for Joel, but I've changed numbers about 10 times. So it's hard for my previous clients to always get a hold of me or me to get a hold of them. But after the selling process is over, I just recommend enjoying it. I mean, it could be the only piece you buy or it could be the first of 100, but land is special, and you just enjoy it.
So Dirk, with that, so you live in Kansas, but hypothetically, I'm a person in Illinois, and I want to buy some property in Illinois.
Yeah.
Would you be someone that I would call to help me with that, or would I have to find somebody locally in Illinois?
It could be either or. Fortunately for me, since I've lived all over the place, I know agents all over the place, and so I know land all over the place. I've hunted in a lot of these states. I've sold land in a lot of these Midwestern states, as far as Tennessee. And I would be more than happy to help. I'm not licensed in some of those states, so I can't technically write contracts and do those type of things. But I can kind of be your little angel or your demon on your shoulder, saying, no, you don't want to do that, or yes, you want to do that. And if there is another good agent in those states to help you, I can help gauge that too, with a bit of a phone call with them and say, hey, I think this guy or this lady are going to be very good for you. They'll show you around, they'll work with you, and I'll kind of be here to help you in the background.
Yeah, perfect. So you just said something. Do you have quite a few clients that are females out looking for ground that are looking for hunting ground specifically?
Yeah. You'd be surprised, honestly. I mean, I think Joel's wife is a great example of it. I think she's just as obsessed with bow hunting as he is.
Well, you mentioned the deer in the picture behind me. It's not mine. Let's put it that way. Right? Exactly.
And, I think nowadays the share of wealth in the work world is pretty, I'm not trying to get political, but as far as my clients are concerned, a lot of the women that have been interested in land, whether hunting or recreation or retirement or buying a house on rural, whatever, I mean, they're just as excited about it as the men that I've worked with, and it's becoming more and more women are becoming interested, and of all wealth levels. I mean, again, 100 millionaires, or they're buying their first 40 acres. It's been a cool thing to see, honestly. And there's a lot more women in the outdoor world now hunting, which is good.
Yeah, which is really good. Very good. All right, Tim, any other questions?
Oh, this has been great. I tell you what, Dirk, I mean, we could sit here. I mean, we could sit here for another hour easy and just talk either hunting or even questions about hunting properties. I have a whole laundry list of questions. But I would tell you, I think Joel and I would love to have you back and approach some other topics if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, man, I would be happy to. I know there's a lot more questions out there, I'd imagine, for both of you and probably your audience. And if there's some certain topics that I can get more detailed on, I would be more than happy to. So absolutely.
Dirk, let me, in closing here, let me throw you kind of a off-script question here. We didn't prep you for this and want it off the cuff here, but you're hunting, you're a hunter and you've got some land. What's the craziest experience while hunting that you've had up to date in your life?
So this is a 2-day. This is a 2-day deal for me. I have a great friend in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, who owns one of the most incredible farms, 300 some acres that I've ever hunted in my life. I mean, he's got booners every year. And this was back in 2010. He had a hit lister that was over 200 inches, right? And he said, Dirk, you can hunt every deer that you want on this property, but you cannot shoot that deer. And I'm like, okay, what are the odds of me seeing this deer, right? We get it. His farmer was picking his corn the day I got there. We got in a blind that evening at I want to say it was 4 o'clock, 4:30. And I'm not kidding you. I have video of this, and it's about 30 minutes into sitting in there. This buck comes out about 70 yards from us to our left. And I'm trying to turn around and film this. He's with a doe. And by far the largest buck I've ever seen in my life at that distance. And he didn't come any closer than that, and I completely understood. I was actually with him in the blind. And I was like, gosh, he didn't bring his bow that day because he had actually tagged out on a 180-incher the week before. And he had to wait till rifle season in Wisconsin to go after this big buck. And so I was like, my gosh, what a great experience. And we had this big 9 that I could have shot, would just not come in close enough because of that giant, 200-incher that was over on the other side of that big cornfield. And so great experience. I was like, man, called my buddies, like, you're not going to believe the deer I saw today. I got video of it. It's incredible and blah, blah, blah. And so I go out the next morning and I go to the west side of his farm and just me in a tree stand. He's like, go sit here. We got this big gnarly 9-pointer that's old and just bully buck, and you'll be able to smell him coming. He's just that rutted up. I'm like, all right, I can do that. Probably 150-inch, probably 6-7-year-old buck, just gnarly.
My wife says that about me too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I get in the tree, and it's a morning sit, and it's in this bedding area, and I get in the tree, and all hell's breaking loose out in this thicket. This big thicket on this big hill, and I don't know if you ever hunted Buffalo County or been up there, but a lot of bluffs. And so I'm looking up this hill like this, and day breaks, and I'm trying to glass, and all of a sudden I see that 9-pointer just bolt out of the thicket, and then here comes that big 200-incher again. And I'm not kidding you, I have video of this too. He circles, and at 35 yards, he stands broadside to me. At 35 yards. And I could have shot him. And to this day, unfortunately, the landowner, my buddies, saw him on opening day of rifle season, could not get a shot. And a neighbor's buddy who never hunts, never does anything on the 40 acres next to him, killed him.
Oh.
And he ended up scoring 201 inches. And that's after he had lost the drop time. And to this day, that is the craziest hunt. 2 days of hunting I've ever been. I mean, I've had some great hunts, and I've seen some really, really big deer. Unfortunately, I haven't been close enough to put an arrow in them, but that was the craziest 2 days I've ever had in the woods, with just the action and the just giant deer that I've seen. So I don't know if that's a crazy, crazy story, but I'll never forget that. Neither will he. He's like, I should have just let you shoot that thing. Hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those deer don't come around very often.
No, and I honestly, I go to Iowa every year, and regardless of a tag or not, I video if I don't have a tag for my buddy Mike, who you met, right? and I have probably videoed more giant deer than I've ever had in front of me. And I don't know if that's just my destiny, but his wall looks like Cabela's. Mine doesn't quite look that
What are
way.
you doing in late October, November, Dirk? We
Yeah.
might bring you down to Southern Iowa if you're a good luck
Hey.
charm. Yeah.
I'd love to, man. I'd love to come film or do whatever. I'll be there first week in November, no matter what.
Awesome.
That's great.
Well, again, we want to thank you for joining our podcast and sharing your wealth of knowledge, and again, putting up with us and our jokes, and sharing some good stories yourself. So, with that, we will let you go from Midwest Hunting and Outdoors. Have fun, be safe, and get outdoors.
Thanks, fellas.
All
Take
right.
care.
See you, Dirk.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening or watching our show. We have some exciting topics and guests coming up.
We ask that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
We look forward to hearing your suggestions for topics.
Questions and comments. This is Two Dumbasses signing off. Until next time,
Be safe,
have fun, and get outdoors.